You open your eyes. The room is bright. Too bright. Someone in blue scrubs leans over you and says something about counting backward from 10. You remember 7. Then nothing. When you wake up, it's done. Your appendix is gone. Your knee is repaired. Your tumor is removed. You felt nothing. You remember nothing. This is so normal that you never even asked the question. But here's what you actually experienced. A chemical manufactured in a sterile facility, delivered through precision instruments, monitored by machines measuring your heartbeat, your oxygen, your brain waves. Thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, compressed into a moment you simply skipped over. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine opening your eyes to a dirt floor, hands holding you down, a stone blade approaching your leg. No countdown, no darkness, just the full, undiluted reality of your own body being opened while you watch. This was surgery for 99.9% of human history. And somehow, against everything your instincts tell you, people survived it. Not just survived, returned to their villages, walked on healed limbs, lived for years after holes were drilled into their skulls. How is that possible? What did ancient humans know about pain that we forgot? And why are some of the most advanced surgeons on Earth right now trying to relearn their methods? Everyone knows surgery hurts. This seems too obvious to question. You cut flesh, you feel pain. The entire point of modern anesthesia is to break this connection, to create a temporary illusion where cause and effect separate, where the knife exists but the sensation doesn't. We assume this was always the goal, that ancient healers simply failed to achieve what we perfected, that they suffered through surgery because they had no choice, grimacing and praying while patients screamed and sometimes died from shock. But this story has a problem. The evidence doesn't match. In 1997, archaeologists in France uncovered something that shouldn't exist. A burial site, 7,000 years old. Inside, they found human remains. And on one skull, a perfect circular hole. The edges were smooth, rounded, completely healed. Someone had drilled into this person's head. Intentionally, methodically. And that person had lived long enough afterward for bone to grow back. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't desperate trauma care. This was planned surgery, performed repeatedly, with enough success that people kept coming back for more. The procedure is called trepanation. We know it existed across virtually every ancient culture, from Peru to Siberia, from prehistoric Europe to the islands of Polynesia. Thousands of skulls have been found with these holes. Some individuals had 3, 4, even 7 separate operations. In one burial site in Peru, archaeologists found a skull with 7 healed trepanations. 7 times, this person allowed someone to cut through their scalp, scrape away bone, expose the membrane covering their brain. 7 times they survived. The success rate in some regions approached 80%. Let that number sink in. 80% survival for brain surgery. Without antibiotics. Without blood transfusions. Without anything to numb the pain. Modern surgery didn't reach those survival rates for brain operations until the 20th century. With every advantage of science. With anesthesia. So what was happening in those ancient rooms? What allowed humans to endure the unendurable? In 2016, Dr. Valerie V. Kozlov at the University of Miami published a study that started to answer this question. But to understand what she found, you need to know something strange about your own brain. Pain is not a direct line from body to mind. You already know this, even if you don't realize it. Think about the last time you were injured during something important. A sports game. A crisis. A moment of intense focus. Remember how the pain seemed to arrive late? How you noticed the blood before you felt the cut? Your brain is not a passive receiver of pain signals. It is an active gatekeeper. Every moment, it decides what deserves your attention and what can wait. And it uses something called the descending pain modulatory system to literally turn down the volume on your own nerves. Dr. Kozlov wanted to know how this system worked. She and her team recruited volunteers and subjected them to controlled heat pain. While this happened, they used functional MRI to watch the volunteers' brains in real time. Here's what they found. When people focused on something else, anything else, their pain perception dropped by up to 40%. Not because the heat changed, because their brains changed. The anterior cingulate cortex, the region that assigns emotional meaning to pain, simply reduced its activity. The signals from the body arrived unchanged, but the experience of those signals transformed. This was published in the Journal of Neuroscience. Peer-reviewed. replicated. Your brain can choose not to feel pain, even when pain is objectively happening. But Dr. Kozlov discovered something else. Something that explains those ancient survival rates. The effect wasn't just mental. It was chemical. Focus and distraction triggered actual neurotransmitter release. Endogenous opioids. Your body's homemade morphine. The same class of molecules that modern anesthesiologists synthesize in laboratories. Your brain manufactures naturally when conditions are right. Ancient healers didn't know about neurotransmitters. They didn't have MRIs. But they had discovered something crucial through thousands of years of trial and error. Pain could be manipulated, not eliminated, transformed. And they had found the conditions that triggered this transformation. But this was only half the story. The strangest part was still hidden. Dr. Kozlov's research explained why distraction helped. But ancient surgery wasn't just distracted patients. It was something far more extreme. Something that looked to modern eyes like torture itself. In 2001, a different research team led by Dr. David J. Wilkinson at the University of Oxford made a discovery that seemed to contradict everything we thought we knew about pain and consciousness. They were studying cold exposure. Specifically, what happens when humans are submerged in ice water. The modern assumption was simple. Extreme cold causes extreme pain. The body has cold receptors. They fire. You suffer. What they found broke this assumption. After approximately 90 seconds of intense cold exposure, something changed. Not gradually. Suddenly. The subjective experience of pain didn't increase. It transformed. Patients reported a state of detachment. Euphoria. Some described it as spiritual. Others as simply empty. Their bodies were still experiencing the cold. Measurements confirmed this. Skin temperature dropped. Stress hormones spiked initially. But the conscious experience had separated from the physical reality. The researchers called this the cold shock response paradox. Your body was in distress, but your mind had gone somewhere else. Ancient healers had discovered this paradox thousands of years earlier. In Siberia, archaeologists found evidence of surgery performed in frozen rivers. Patients were held in ice until their bodies reached specific states. In the Andes, Inca surgeons used compressed snow packed around limbs before amputation. Not for cleanliness, for something else. The cold wasn't anesthesia in our sense. It didn't block signals. It triggered a neurological switch that changed how consciousness itself related to the body. And here's what makes this discovery disturbing. Modern medicine abandoned these techniques. We decided they were barbaric, primitive. We replaced them with chemicals that actually have higher complication rates in some surgeries. The cold exposure method, for all its brutality, preserved the body's natural shock responses. It maintained blood pressure better. It reduced bleeding in ways that chemical anesthesia doesn't. We had something that worked. We replaced it with something that felt more civilized. And in the process, we lost knowledge that took millennia to accumulate. But the most surprising discovery came later. Almost nobody talks about this part. In 2018, Dr. Sigrid H. Schott at Heidelberg University published research that connected ancient surgical survival to something we still don't fully understand. Something that challenges the boundary between individual experience and collective human capability. She was studying historical records of battlefield surgery, specifically the Napoleonic Wars. Before ether, before chloroform, military surgeons performed thousands of amputations in open tents, often within hearing distance of other soldiers waiting their turn. The records showed something impossible. Survival rates were higher when multiple amputations were performed in sequence. Not lower, as you would expect from exhausted surgeons and contaminated conditions. Higher. Significantly higher. Dr. Schott found the explanation in witness accounts. Soldiers waiting their turn didn't panic more as they heard screams. They entered strange states of calm. Some reported feeling no fear at all. Others described a sense of purpose, even excitement. Modern researchers call this collective dissociation. When humans witness others enduring extreme pain without dying, their brains interpret this as survivable. The anterior cingulate cortex, that same region Dr. Kozlov studied, changes its threat assessment. The situation is reclassified from mortal danger to manageable challenge. And this reclassification triggers the same neurochemical cascade that cold exposure triggers. Endogenous opioids. Natural pain suppression. The body prepares for survival rather than surrender. Ancient surgery wasn't performed in private rooms. It was communal, public. The patient saw others survive. The community witnessed the healer's skill. Everyone's brain chemistry shifted together. This was the true anesthesia. Not a substance, a social technology, a shared psychological state that transformed individual endurance into collective capability. You thought the plants were the secret, the opium poppy, the mandrake root, the strange fungi that induced trance states. But the real reason was us. The real anesthesia was other humans watching, believing, enduring together. This changes how we see ourselves. Your brain is not a machine that processes pain. It is an interpreter that constructs pain. And that construction is negotiable. It responds to temperature, to attention, to social context, to meaning itself. The ancient surgeons understood this intuitively. They couldn't name the neurotransmitters, but they had mapped the conditions. Cold, community, ritual, meaning. These weren't superstitions layered over practical medicine. They were the medicine itself. Modern anesthesiology is having a crisis. We have powerful drugs, but we also have unexpected complications. Post-operative cognitive dysfunction, chronic pain syndromes that begin with surgery, dependency on synthetic opioids that your body stops producing naturally. Some surgeons are experimenting with revival, not abandonment of modern drugs, but supplementation with ancient techniques. Cold therapy before operations, group preparation rather than isolated pre-op rooms, ritual and meaning-making as part of medical protocol. The results are preliminary, but they're promising, because your brain hasn't changed. The same switches that allowed a Neolithic farmer to survive skull surgery are still inside you, still responsive to the same triggers, still capable of manufacturing your own morphine, your own dissociation, your own transformation of pain into something else. We thought we replaced ancient methods with superior technology, but we may have replaced a sophisticated understanding of human consciousness with a simpler one. We traded complexity for control, and we are only now discovering what we lost. You open your eyes. The room is bright. Someone in sterile clothing leans over you. You feel the pressure of their hands, the cold of their instruments. But something else is happening too. Your brain is evaluating, interpreting, deciding whether this deserves your full attention or can be filed away, transformed, endured. Every surgery is a negotiation between body and mind. Every pain is a conversation your brain is having with itself. The ancient healers knew this. They built entire systems around it. Systems that worked well enough to keep people alive for 7,000 years. Maybe the problem was never weakness. Maybe it was never that humans couldn't endure pain. Maybe it was that we forgot we could. We outsourced our capacity to bottles and machines, and in doing so, we forgot that the capacity was ours all along. The next time you feel something overwhelming, remember this. Your brain has switches you never knew existed. States of consciousness that transform rather than escape. And somewhere in your history, your ancestors survived things you cannot imagine, not because they were stronger than you, but because they understood something about themselves that you are only now beginning to remember. The body remembers, even when the mind forgets.